I'm Jasmine, and I decided early on what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be an actuary. And for those of you who don't know what an actuary is, let me explain. An actuary basically uses math in order to predict the future, whereas accountants use math in order to compile data from the past. But that's besides the point. Because I liked math a lot, I really wanted to be able to do higher level math in high school. And in middle school, you know when you have to apply to programs like IB or AP or IBT, or I think there were a lot of other programs, but I was faced with the choice of did I want to do IB math or AP math, because both sounded like good options to me. They were both higher level math, so I could explore my interests. But in the end, well, you know what I chose, right? Because of the title. I chose IB. Well, why did I choose IB? Primarily because it's a program, and AP is a course. So let me explain the difference to you. So basically in IB, you have to take all IB level courses. So every single course that you take is technically higher leveled than the regular high school course. And then you also get the choice to do standard or higher level of the courses that you choose. But in AP, that's not the case. In AP, you get to choose which courses you want to pick as AP courses, and the rest are just regular high school courses. So, not exactly the same as IB. And I also must add that in IB, you have to do a lot of unnecessary things, like investigations. You have to write a ton of essays that are for the IB diploma, and you also have to do a ton of community service. You also have to do some personal projects. It's a lot more than just higher level courses. You have to do a lot of other stuff. If I just wanted to do higher level math, I could do IB or AP, because the two are of similar levels anyways. But what drew me to IB was that it was a program with a diploma that you can get at the end. I kind of thought that that sounded more appealing to me. And it also happens to be a college level program, because International Baccalaureate literally means college level. But actually, I didn't even know it was a college level program at the time. But I thought I could handle the higher level courses, so I decided to take it. Anyways, those were a bunch of unnecessary details about my life that you probably did not want to know or need to know, but let's get into it. So first of all, how much first year material does IB math really cover? And the answer to that question is really only a tiny bit. Only a small fraction of what I learned in first year is actually what we learned in IB. So at Waterloo, all first year math students have to take the same core math courses. So I had to take linear algebra, calculus, and computer science. So let's go through each of those one by one and talk about whether or not IB math really helped. So in my algebra classes, I had two of them. The first was an introduction to proofs, and the second was linear algebra part 1. So the only part of HO math that really helped me in the first Introductions to Proof course was complex numbers and the unit on proofs. Complex numbers, because there was a unit on complex numbers in proofs, and we had to find modulus of a complex number. We had to do addition, we had to do multiplication of complex numbers and Euler's form and all of that stuff. And proofs because, well, it's a course on proofs. So, and even so, I didn't come into that class knowing how to do every proof in existence. But I did have a pretty decent foundation based on what I'd learned in HL Math. There were 2 proofs that I found hard, obviously, and so many more proof techniques that I hadn't learned in HL Math. But I'd still say that HL Math gave me a good foundation for the basics of doing proofs. And that's the only reason why I survived that course. So linear algebra. It was almost entirely new stuff. And the only part of HL Math that helped me, albeit very slightly, was the unit on vectors. Because there were a few similar concepts, such as finding the shortest distance between 2 planes or a point in a plane, but those were done with a different concept that I never learned before, called projections. And we did not do projections in HL Math. So in my calculus courses, I took Calc 1 and Calc 2. So in Calc 1, the part of HL Math that really helped me was the unit on derivatives. Since we never really learned epsilon delta proofs or other types of calculus proofs in HL Math, that was pretty much the only thing that really helped me in Calc 1. Differential calculus in Calc 1 was only half the course though. And we also learned limits in Calc 1. So I do think that L'Hopital's rule and stuff like that did also come in handy for limits. But we also learned a lot more limit techniques that we never learned in HL Math. So I'd say for calculus, or for Calc 1 in particular, I'd say that HL Math did cover quite a big proportion of what was actually taught. And Calc 2, however, I'd say most of the stuff was actually what I did in HL Math. So things like solves of revolution, integrals, Riemann sums, and so on. And partial fractions also surprisingly came in handy. I know, something that I thought was completely useless. When am I ever gonna do this in HL Math? And it came up in integrals. So computer science. I will say my only knowledge of computer science came from coding random products on Hopscotch, which is this app that I don't even know if you guys know anymore. It was really popular when I was a kid, but I'm not sure if people even use it nowadays. And an introductory course on Java in high school. So really nothing to do with HL Math at all. It was just my own personal interest and a course in high school. And I did find computer science quite hard, even though I did have some experience coding. But it wasn't impossible to get a good mark. So overall, HL Math did help me a little bit for algebra and for calculus and computer science. But even for calculus, where I felt like most of the course I was familiar with, there was still a lot of new material that I hadn't learned in HL Math. So, second topic. What's the workload like? Because I think it's not fair to just compare the content, because obviously high school math is not going to cover everything in university math. But the whole point of IB or AP is to get used to the workload beforehand, before going to university. And I'd say in HR Math, the workload was definitely lighter than university. But I'd say with other IB commitments like CAS, extracurriculars, EE, TOK, and other things, it's honestly like comparable to the workload at uni so far. But it also really depends on how much you study every day. Because I was not a model student during first year. I only studied maybe like 3 hours per day, which is really not a lot compared to other students. Like some people were studying maybe like 5 hours a day, and then they probably got higher marks than me. So yeah. But with all things considered, I'd say the workload is pretty comparable to IB workload, in my opinion though. And last question, do I think IB HR Math was worth it? To rephrase the question, did I think I needed IB HR Math to prepare me for first year uni as a math major? Well, I think with everything, there are like pros and cons to HR Math. So pros, you get to learn a little bit of first year material. And that is probably the biggest reason why I think anybody should choose HR Math or AP Math for that matter. And IB workload can be similar to uni workload to an extent. And I say to an extent because if you think about just the studying alone, it's definitely not comparable. But if you think about CAS, things like CAS, things like EE, things like TOK, being a part of IB, then yeah, it is somewhat similar to uni workload. So I think the best thing about IB is that it prepares you for some foundational first year skills that are necessary in order for you to have a good time in uni. Because if you think about it, 4 months is like a calculus course, right? And in uni, it's a little bit shorter. It's like 3.5 months because of exams at the end. In 4 months in high school, we spent maybe like about 2 to 3 weeks learning all of the integration techniques properly. So like U-sub, integration by parts, maybe also partial fraction decomposition. I'm not sure if we learned that or not in high school actually, but yeah, we spent about 3 weeks doing that in high school. Now in university, or at least for me, in my calculus course, we spent a week, like only 1 week doing all of those techniques. And we were expected to know it well enough in order to have a quiz by next week. Like, do you see how that could get stressful if you didn't know those things ahead of time? So that's the biggest pro of IB Math that I can think of. Of course, there are some cons when it comes to IB Math. So the first one is that it doesn't prepare you for everything you learn in first year. And I think it's a con because like they do advertise IB and AP as like university preparation courses. If IB and AP don't prepare you adequately enough for university, then why should they be called university preparation courses? And also, studying alone, the workload is definitely less than in university expectations. Because in university, for every hour of lecture that you have, you're expected to study 1.5 times the amount. So let's say you had 2 hours of lecture. For that 2 hours of lecture, you're expected to study 3 hours. So for me, I usually had like 2 1-hour lectures a day. So that equates to about 4 hours of studying every day. Now in IB, I did not study as much. I only had to study maybe about an hour or 2 a day. Like maybe 2 hours max. And that was enough to keep up with my courses. And so yeah, I'd say the biggest con is that the workload doesn't prepare you enough for university. So I personally do think that IB Math is worth the extra work. You do eventually need all the skills that you learn in HL Math if you're pursuing a math major. It's not really the course material that matters in the end, but the math skills that you pick up while doing the course that will help you in university. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the video, and let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with me. And I'll see you in the next one.